All right, this video is an introduction to sequences. And so it's just a list of numbers in a specific order. So you know this sequence. It's our number system. They're whole numbers. You can also have a sequence like this. Or we could even start it with our evens. You could do your perfect squares. So on and so on and so on. But it's just a list of numbers. So we can create some general term that gives us these sequences like this. So it says find the first 5 terms of the given sequence. And so what this means is if you plug in a 1 for that n, it would go everywhere there is n. So we can substitute that in for any number we want like this. So if we make it 1, this means this is our first term. So we plug in 1 and we get 2. If you make 2 for our n, then we plug in 2 and that's our second term. Plugging in 3 gives us our third, plugging in 4 gives us our fourth, and plugging in 5 gives our fifth, and so on. So it creates our first 5 terms. So let's try one. So here's n, and there is n. So if we want our first term, that means we will be plugging in our n equals 1 for our first term. So it would be like this, 2 times 1 minus 1. So we're just replacing the n with 1, and so there's our first term. And then we plug in 2 for our second term. And that would give us 3. So 2 times 2 is 4, minus 1 is 3. And then we just keep going until we get to our fifth term. So you can see what type of numbers this is generating. I just started writing them. That's right, it's generating the odds. So that general term creates our odd numbers for us, 2n minus 1. So it's one you kind of want to remember because odds are pretty important. So if you use 2n minus 1, plugging in 1 would give us our first odd, and then 2 is our second odd, 3 is our third, and so on. So our first 5 terms of our sequence are 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And so you don't have to even use the formula anymore. You could see that our next one would be 11 and then 13. And that's what our 2 actually will give us. And we'll talk more about that when we get to arithmetic sequences. All right, you can also do this in your calculator. Your calculator will give us a sequence. So just like this. So let's try it in our calculator. Okay, so to do this in your calculator, first thing you're going to do is change the mode. And you'll see you have parametric, polar, and sequential. That's what these variables are. There's your x, your t, your theta, and your n. So we scroll down and scroll over to sequential. And now our calculator is in sequential. So when you click this button, it's actually going to put an in there. So we go to second. It's not second. We go to y. And then now you can see this is now what we have. And so in the second part, you want to put in our sequence. So 2n minus 1. Like that. And now it's set up. And so now you want to first change your table set. So make sure it says 1 and 1. And so now when we go to the table, it's not going to be x and y. It's going to be n and our sequence. So n and our term. So our first term, our second term, our third term, and our fourth term. And that 1 right there just represents when do we start our n's. So if you put this at 3 and you go back to your table, you'll see it doesn't start until the third one. So that's the minimum value you can have. And so we want this to start at 1 because that's what our domain says. We go from 1 on. And there you go. So you see the 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Those are the first 5 terms that we had. So there you have it. That's our intro to sequences.